would be Andy Pearson, Val Ahmet, and Pam X.
Thank you. We'll stand for pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if I could just ask anybody that has not signed the guest register yet over there, there's one for the truth of taxation and one for the regular meeting. So please sign your name.
All right, Mr. Thomas, would you read the vision statement?
I will.
Please.
The Butterfield-Odin Public School provides a safe, welcoming, and challenging learning environment for all students where differences are assets. We partner with families to instill the qualities whereby all students are engaged in and accountable for their learning.
Thank you. Approval of agenda is presented for amended. A motion by Susan. We have a second.
One second.
Second by Caitlin. Motion by Susan and a second by Caitlin. Any other discussion, questions? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Approval of meeting minutes from regular meeting Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021 at 7 p.m.
Motion.
A motion by Susan. Do I have a second? Second by Caitlin. So a motion by Susan, second by Caitlin. To approve the minutes. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Payment of November bills.
Mr. Chairman, I went through all the bills and they are all appropriate. What happened also that is what we received a couple of bills, actually about 5 or 6 in the last day or two, and I'd really like to pay those. They're also regular bills that I've approved. They just didn't get into the list because Dawn does that as of last week, and of course a few things come along. So if I'll just mention them publicly so we know what
Sure.
those are, and I'd like to have those added to our list. The first is for AT&T. The total bill is for $1,209.79. Another for Minnesota Career Information System, which is asked for by our counselor for $590. I approve that. I think it's an excellent idea. It's an academic test package. The post office box that we have is due. And so for the 12 months that we usually take it for is $226. And for example, this is due the 31st, and we won't have another meeting until way past that. So that's why I wanted some of these to take me through it now. But that's for, as I said, $226. In Amazon purchase of $53.98 for some alcohol that's needed in the tech area. We need 2 of those 16-ounce packets, and so that's
We're
another
talking
item.
rubbing alcohol.
Yeah. I'll get me going. Well,
Tech department.
good, Shannon, good one. Another is the Institute for Environmental Assessment for $462, and that's for the third year inspection of the property for in various environmental issues that we have to have them look at, and they have, and that's a legitimate bill for us as well. And then for, of all things, a bill from our auditors. Supplemental bill from what they had already sent us. That's for $3,200. I've looked at all these, Mr. Chairman, and they're all appropriate bills for us to pay.
Can I ask a question on a couple of,
Oh.
just what they actually are, like?
Yeah.
Scogan Mechanical LLC. It was,
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if that was either the boiler or if that was work on our
Lindsay knows Scogan Mechanical LLC.
I think it was maybe for our HV system. For some,
That's usually what they do, but I was trying to remember what they were doing.
yeah, I think they were cleaning out all the vents is what it seems to me, so what that was for.
I guess, I didn't see that one.
Yeah,
And then,
okay.
Profera, is that how you said mine, Charlie Synergies?
Yeah, Trafera is, was, do you remember that? It's- It's, I think it's
Chromebooks stuff.
yeah. I should have asked Aaron, right?
Yeah. Looking at one, and it was some past due thing that was from last year, and I'm not sure why it didn't get paid, so we just paid it.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the payment of the December bills.
I have a motion by Christie. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Susan. And so I have a motion by Christie, second by Susan. Approve the payments of December bills. Any other discussion, questions? All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Information, we had the TNT hearing. It's hearing at 6:30 was held here. Enrollment report.
Yep, Mr. Chairman. At our last board meeting, we had a total of, well, K through 12 students, and those are the ones where most of the dollars come. We had a total of 221 students. This month, I'm reporting that we have one more. We have a total of 222 students K through 12. Our numbers of VPK are continuing to stay the same at 14. So our total number of students is 236. That doesn't include childcare and some other things, but that's our the students for which we're paid. So it's going in the right direction, Mr. Chairman.
So the number 236 is pre-K.
VPK through 12. VP.
Oh.
Voluntary pre-K is what that stands for.
VPK through 12th grade.
Yep. That was 14. The K through 12 was the 222.
Thank you. MSBA conferences in January.
Yeah, just,
Everybody should have been signed up if they're gonna
yeah,
go already.
they're going to go. And the housing is all set. We're all set for that. I'll be there, and we have 2 board members that are going.
How many board members?
Two.
Two, okay. 2 board attendants.
District revenues and expenditures budget for fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022.
Lindsay, did we have to do anything else with that?
We have to post it to our website. And local newspapers too, so that all community members can see it.
Okay. And so we can do that based on our the regular meeting, that a couple more agenda items down.
That was the chart in the TNT presentation that I went over
Right.
that showed the restricted and the
Okay, so that has to be posted on our website and.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm assuming,
So that's all that is about, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Is there any other information we need to know about?
Not unless Mr. Walker had anything else. But you have your report coming up, so.
All right, we'll go through committee reports, academic and athletic pairing. Nothing. Building, grounds, health, safety, transportation. Community education.
Haven't heard anything.
Nothing. Continuing education, Chrissy? Caitlin?
No.
No. Meet and confer,
Oh, yes, we had a meet and confer meeting. On Tuesday, December 7th at 3:15 here in the media center. It was a very, very good meeting. There were a lot of positive comments from the teachers. There were also some suggestions also that were that we embraced and so very good conversation took place at this meeting. And I think just one of our highlights is that communication is a huge thing. And I think the teachers, maybe had a little concern about, how things were during COVID. And I think that's with every business, whether it be a school or I work at the bank, communication is huge. We need to always be communicating and also remembering our chain of command. So, I think that's basically what I would like to talk about. And again, we have to be careful that we, are, uh, aware of the privacy of, different, uh, we don't want to say, well, this person isn't doing their job good or whatever. But the teachers were very open to concerns that they have throughout the school, whether it be communication, the condition of the building, um, you know, different things. So it was a good meeting.
thank you.
Mhm.
Negotiations, I don't know, are we,
We will be
We need
meeting
to do that.
right after the break.
okay. Personnel, Andy or Pam, they're not here, Riverbend. Valerie's not here, staff development, Christie,
Yes, we had an online meeting. And Lucy Ammon had put out that Tiffany Sambo had requested $210 for an online conference that was held October 28th, 2021. It was the MSSWA Fall Conference. Her reason for requesting the funds were to learn more about topics related to her position as school social worker and to fulfill her CEU requirements through her licensing. Board of SW board. Oh, that's what she's getting her continuing license for. And then Lucille Ammon also requested $98 for an online class called Teach, Create, Motivate. It was requested to gain new ideas to engage students in the classroom, to incorporate new approaches to classroom situations such as discipline, motivation, engagement, participation, etc. The class was done during the summer. So then we as staff development committee had to email our response back to Lucille, and I believe they all passed.
Mhm.
So that's all I have on that.
thank you. Technology. Here, One with Family Collaborative, Christie, Caitlin, nothing. Wellness is Pam, and she's gone, and World's Best Workforce. We met,
We met The other day, we went over the world's best workforce and the ANI, the achievement and integration. We put together a new report for this last year and suggestions for this coming year that we're in now. We're able to have the board meet on the 15th last week and approve that, and then we were able to submit that to the state of Minnesota Department of Education, which is a requirement every year at this time that we do. So we're all good for the world's best workforce.
Okay, Shannon, this
Yes.
just flew right past me,
Oh.
but the One Family Collaborative,
Yep,
we met, at the Human Service Building on December 8th. And both Pam and I were there representing Butterfield-Odin. They gave the November 21 financial report. They also, presented the 2022 proposed budget, which was approved unanimously. And then there was, coordinator performance review and discussion. So that was going to be emailed out to the committee. And then we had to, basically do a performance review for both Naomi and Shauna. And then, there was mini grant proposal for 2022 funds. The mini grants were for youth development, Illusion Theater, VFC, help fund the project development plays. Each school has their own, well, this is kind of neat. They're gonna have these plays and each school will have their own. And it will be to provide leadership. So there's more coming on that. VFC funding request $4,461. St. James and Butterfield-Odin are taking part on that. And $7,461 is the total cost of the program. Medelia opted out of that this year. I'm not sure why, but they did. Our next meeting will be February, and we'll have like a retreat, and that'll be like 3 to 6 p.m. So
thank you. All right, we'll move into administration reports. Mr. Thomas, you want to go first?
Mr. Chairman, I've given you, sent a report out and I have nothing to add about that. As until we get to the various items on the agenda, I'll discuss those at that particular point. Thank you.
do you know, does Pam usually put in the report from the superintendent and the principal in the book?
I don't know if she does. I don't think she does. But let me check, and if she does, I've sent that out to everyone. I can just add that.
Yeah, I got a new computer and I can't figure out how to get my computer to communicate with my old printer, so I'm having issues, so.
Here's your guy. Or Chance.
Maybe I should invite Aaron Wolfschlager for Christmas and
There you go.
come and help me. It's a nice MacBook Pro. It's a good computer. So anyway,
Alright.
okay,
Thank you. All right, Mr. Walker?
Yes, bottom line in this recap, trimester one ended, November 30th, so just after our last meeting. And I assume try two started on December 1st. Just yesterday, my kindergarten through fifth grade had their holiday concert here at 2:00. It was pretty cool. A lot of our students, I think in the past, whether it's been in this school or other schools I've been a part of, many of the kids are featuring just their voice and like a choir type thing for the kids. And the kids got to work through bells and xylophones and all sorts of stuff, and have an opportunity to showcase musical talents outside of vocals, along with it. So that was neat. Then our fifth, sixth graders had the opportunity to sort of and play a small guitar. I don't know if it's called a ukulele or what exactly it is, but do some of those things as well. And then last night, our 5th through 12th graders had their band and their choir concert last night as well. Both of them have very good um, uh, attendance. The the day concert for the K through 5 it was held at 2, and you visited with for foods, and they um, uh, worked with their parents of our students, and if they asked for the time to come on over, they were allowed that, etc. So it was a full house. So that was a lot of fun to see. I actually had been in and out a couple times between 1:30 and 2 o'clock. I showed back up at like 5 to 2, and I ended up actually watching from the lobby with probably about another half dozen like high school staff that had like prep time or something like that. So um, we were making comments about um, how we enjoyed just having the opportunity to see something a little bit different from Kids Showcase. Some of those will showcase themselves with design forms and bells. We got in uh, our new COVID testing supplies for both staff and students. We for about a year and a half have been doing saliva-based testing through a company and ship it out. And within 24 to 48 hours, we get results. That was more of a proactive piece that followed state opportunities. Um, However, we've now switched to rapid tests for both students and staff. We have a couple different variations. Some are for staff and students, some are for just students, and through a couple different companies. And what they are is the nasal swab piece. And we have them so that they're available. But what will take place is that if the family would like the kit themselves, like a student's sick or has a symptom, or they're saying, "Hey, I'm not feeling well, and chest really hurts." Well, if they're feeling that bad, poorly, really ask to go to the nurse or something like that. The family would like kit, we'll send them home. The family can do it within 15 minutes to have the results, and then the results are asked to be shared with us, and then we can move forward with any type of protocol piece that we have there. Um, we can also use it in a little bit more proactive way as well. For instance, if somebody was considered close contact, and they're at like 35, or they need to go test instead of having someone have to leave school or make an appointment, or breaking some of those barriers, so that we're able to um, work with our students and staff and some of it. Our PLCs for December, very first, or December 1st, we had Dr. Amy out. Again, she works with our co-teachers and ELL and general ed teachers. Right now, for the most part, that's 6-12, and then as Jamie Limonado returns from maternity leave, she and the elementary teachers will then start joining in on that learning and working towards that co-teaching um, plan that we have with all of our teachers. December 8th, we looked at PBIS, positive behavior intervention support. Our data reflected on data, brought the information and transparency to our staff members on, what's being done with the referral process and where we're at on that. And December 15th, we were to work on PLCs and read talk. Our PLCs will work on talk, read, talk, write. However, it was a late start date due to weather. And in the past, the school board has asked that if we have a late start on a Wednesday, then we don't have early release. And I learned that my first Wednesday, my first year. So we followed that and kept the kids until 3 o'clock that day. Things to come. Actually, starting the 23rd, this Thursday, we have our holiday break that goes from January 2nd, so Monday the 3rd. We'll return with all of our students. January 26th is our high school conference night from 3:30 to 7 o'clock. We're going to commingle that with a family night for all of our families, K through 12, the K through 12. Um, in an effort to get more families here, for conferences and connections, positive connections with our school families. For 5 to 7, we're gonna have walking tacos, so it's just kind of as you come in, you can eat, here, we'll have our kitchen staff is preparing that and helping serve. Then the conferences will be from 3:30 to 7. At 7 o'clock, we're hopeful. There was a group of students that did basically a talent show for Mother's Day last May. And what we're hoping is that we can get a number of our students to show off their talents in whichever ways they deem fit at 7 o'clock till about 8 o'clock with like a talent show. And then K through 12 is also going to, teachers have been asked, some of those project-based pieces or writings and things to have like a gallery show of all the student work and projects that they've been working on throughout the last month or two. Um, Additionally, we have Mrs. Kern, who started doing elementary art for us third trimester last year with K1, but she's worked herself through and working with each grade. She's got a rotation that they're doing things with, and the kids are really enjoying it, and as is she. And then Mr. Altman started Art 1 when the new trimester started here, and the kids are a really cool group. We had 40, at last count, 43 9 through 12 students that wanted to take drawing and art. And as it kind of filtered through, we've got a class of I believe it's at 17 or 18 now. We'll look to then have the students that didn't get that opportunity participate in third try. But they're working on a lot of neat things with just a sketchbook and really nice pencils. But it's cool. I I am not artistic, and so I know how to do a puppy and a walrus that I learned how to do in second grade from my art teacher, and that's still the extent of my ability. But I've been able to come in and see what the kids are doing, and it's pretty cool. So we should have a lot of different things that we can showcase of our students at that evening. So we'll put up flyers and send home stuff as we come back after the calendar year starts. Um, Again, that's January 26th. We'll commingle family night with high school conferences. The 17th, we have no school staff or students. February 18th is a teacher workshop day where we're getting a presenter to come in. And that should be finalized tomorrow on who that is, and we'll kind of talk about that with staff and make that announcement as well. And February 21st is President's Day. Um, there too is no school for staff or students. If there are any questions, I can answer them.
I have those COVID tests that you get for the school, how much does that cost the school?
Actually, they well, they didn't cost us anything.
Okay,
Yeah, at this point. The ones that we were using and the state originally had at me as the COVID coordinator, they send out updates weekly, sometimes it's more than weekly. But they had us going towards the same uh, company we had used last year. And before when it was state funded and it was like, okay, what do you need? We'll send you that. Um, it was not the case now. It was like $100 a test. And I was very careful on, you know, how many we've used, how many people, what people said they were going to use versus what we haven't used, because you know, 10 leftover tests is $1,000. Well, if you have 10 leftover tests, that's not too bad, but with the amount that perhaps from the information I was getting that I would have ordered and what we've trended to use, it didn't match up. So we found an alternative opportunity that also was posted up through the state MDE site or MDH site, and utilized two different grants and pieces for that. That's why some are student and staff, and some are just student. Essentially, they're the same thing, but one of them does the one that's a student and staff. It takes a certain type of phone, or a certain um, series of the phone, like an iPhone. It takes iPhone A to iPhone C, right there, and so as we uh, have started to issue those, we visit with the family, make sure that they have access to that kind of technology in order to do that. Because with that one, actually the phone reads the test and then it tells you, or the other one gives you like 1 or 2 pin lines, and then you just visually do that. We ask them to take a picture of it, and so forth. But it is something that the family has to decide to do. We would obviously, if they're here at school, walk them through it, or do that if they wanted to. But it's something that the school personnel or nurse isn't collecting that sample due to there's a couple other things that we would have to do, and pieces and liability stuff that we can skip out on and still get these free tests as compared to some other schools. The barriers broke, so they have access to them.
And they weren't exactly free, but I applied for a grant, $30,000 grant. And we were approved for that, and so that's why we're able to get these. Essentially, for us, it's free because we got the grant that we applied for.
So if a kid walks in and says, I'd like to get tested for COVID, do they have to contact the parents to say, yes, it's okay?
Yeah, it's not quite that simple. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the parent, I suppose if it was a high school student and there's an A, but we would contact the parent, they'd agree, and we would send them home with the kit to do. It's not something that, Miss Hall or nurse or I, or, someone's going to actually do due to some
They take it home
liability
and do it.
pieces, but yeah, it gives directions, and, I'd feel comfortable with using PPE and sitting there and walking them through. I've done it with my own children, the same tests and things. But to help out, so in case they just would like that. But us
Sure.
actually collecting the sample is something that we can't do with staff.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to action items, and we'll start with audit report presented by our auditors.
And he is here.
Where do you want me?
What do you need?
Nothing.
You want?
Do you want me to sit up there? Do you want me to sit here? What?
Well, did you want to plug into the?
I don't need to. I brought just a
All right.
paper copy.
That's fine. You can just kind of stand up here if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll bring my. Here, you want to join me? Back here.
You can just add-
So this abdo is our report.
Yep. That's what I'll be going through. Is this one right here? All right. Well, thanks for having me. My name's Lane with Abdo. We've done the audit now for about the past half dozen years. So I'll be going through this PowerPoint presentation that we put together. So really, it's a high-level summary of the year's activity. A lot of it probably is going to be redundant on what you went over an hour ago in the TNT hearing. So there's probably not going to be a whole lot of surprises. But again, it's going to be kind of a high level. We'll look at where the district was at during the year, also kind of how things have been trending over the past 5 years. And if anybody has any questions along the way, feel free to interject. Lindsay, if you need anything to add, feel free. Mr. Thomas, same thing. So with that, we'll first start by just talking about what a financial statement audit is, what our audit opinion is, what our responsibility is. We'll look at some of your operating funds, the general fund, food service, community service, and also some key performance indicators on how you compare with other districts in your area and throughout the state. Any questions before we start? Okay. So the first thing that we are required to communicate is what our opinion or what our responsibilities as auditors are, which is provide an opinion on the financial statements. So a lot of times people hear of an audit, they think we're looking for wrongdoing or fraud. That's not the case of a financial statement audit. Really what we're doing is looking at the numbers to make sure that they are solid, that they're accurate. Lindsay does a great job of having things ready for us, adjusting for us. So really we have very few back and forth that we need to go through throughout the year. But you are required to have that independent standpoint and somebody look at that for financial reporting. So ultimately, we provide an opinion on the financial statements that they are free from significant error, material misstatement. We provide a clean and unmodified opinion, which is what you want. But ultimately, the financial statements themselves fall back on the school board through acceptance of the audit report. Okay. We're also required to look at various areas of legal compliance, particularly through the state of Minnesota. They kind of direct us on what areas they want to look at. And there's usually about a half dozen areas that we that they kind of dictate us and to look in those significant spots. We do have one legal compliance finding to report, which will be on the next page. You did not have any single audit this year. You did not expend over $750,000 of federal dollars. So you did get some additional grant dollars that we'll talk about in the next few slides here, but it did not merit a single audit, which is additional audit testing that we're required to do. Okay. So for 2021, we have the 4 findings. The first one, as we mentioned, is that legal compliance finding that's through the state of Minnesota. Basically just says if you have outstanding checks over 3 years old, that you're required to remit them up to the state, and then they'll hold them on your behalf. If somebody were to claim them, then they could collect them through that. So it's really just, again, one area that is pointed out in statute that we noticed that's required to be reported. There's also two additional compliance findings. One, excess cash in the food service fund. So for federal requirements, you're only allowed to have a certain amount of expenditure, or a certain amount of cash compared to the amount of expenditures in your food service fund. And we've seen this with a lot of school districts, with the students being eligible for the free lunch program, is really growing your cash balances. And a lot of times expenditures have kind of gone down as well through a lot of the food service functions. So there is an excess amount of cash in the food service fund that we're required to report through that. And then one other legal compliance through the MDE, which is student activity purpose statements and summaries, and just having those in place. So that is another enhanced focus of GASB 84, which went into play a couple of years ago. Really additional emphasis on student activities and having that purpose statement approved by the board on an annual basis. Okay. And then we have one compliance finding, segregation of duties, which basically just says from a cost benefit standpoint, the office staff on who's involved in some of the accounting functions. In a perfect control environment, there's really 4 different people that would be involved in that area. Again, with the small office size, that isn't possible in this school district. So it is something that is accepted kind of on that risk basis from a cost benefit standpoint again. And that is very common in other school districts your size. So again, a lot of other findings like a financial statement preparation, material adjustments are usually noted in a smaller school district. But again, with Lindsay's experience and her preparation, those are not present for your school district. Okay. You can see on the next page, that's the prior year findings from 2020. They are the similar findings with the exception of that student activity purpose summary for fiscal year 2020.
Let me ask a question if I
Yeah,
can.
absolutely.
With food service excess cash, that's not because we're hoarding money. It's because,
Right.
as you mentioned, and I mentioned earlier in my report, that the truth and taxation, the meals are free.
Yes.
So we get money coming in,
Correct.
but without having to spend it on
Correct.
things that we normally would have to spend it on. So my question is, we don't want to be doing anything inappropriate. What do we do with that excess cash?
Lindsay could probably mention or give her 2 cents on this too. A lot of times it is capital purchases. So you're exactly right. The intent of that was to basically not overcharge students for meals.
Sure.
A lot of things change with COVID, and you are building that because you're not charging for meals, you're collecting it through the grant program. So I would anticipate, and Lindsay, again, let me know if you think I'm off base here, but I would anticipate that would probably change likely through some legislative action at some point. It just hasn't yet. It is, you're only allowed to spend so much as well for, contracting and bidding side of rules too. So there's a lot that goes into it. But most of the time it is spent down on kind of those one big time things, whether it's improving the kitchen, buying new fridges or ovens or whatever it may be, kind of those larger items.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
We, did some work in our kitchen some years back and we
Yep.
took out a loan.
Yep.
Which we're doing very well with the payment of that.
Good.
Could those excess funds be used to pay back that loan?
Lindsay's shaking her head.
Is she saying no? Because I'm thinking no. Is she saying no? Yeah, I'm in the same.
It's not. Like,
Yes. Yep.
it's not a-
So we just kind of have to wait and see what the federal government or what whatever, they say, this is what you can do with it.
Basically, yes.
They'll, if it meets their guidelines, they'll send out a letter saying, hey, what are you gonna, plan to budget your money on? And that's because you actually can't, buy capital expenditures out of food service unless you actually have excess cash to do it. Because in the sense that that fund has to sustain itself. So it's a weird situation where you can't have too little, but you can't have too much.
Yes.
And it kind of hit us right in 1 year because all of a sudden for a whole year, the reimbursement rate from the federal government is much higher than what it is under the food nutrition program. Also, we did purchase some appliances and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
Mr. Thomas goes and gets some grants
Mhm.
for it. So
Yes.
we actually had grants to purchase it, so it didn't hit the our
Yeah.
fund balance anyway. So I mean, we were doing some of that stuff. It just happens that it wasn't enough, and it was a little hard here because it was our first year in our new contract. We switched food service vendors as well. So without knowing how the year was going to project out, because actually we have been break even in the past if you look at our food service. So it's one of those things where I was more conservative than not because I don't want to spend money that I didn't know was going to be there by the end.
And when you think of those are dollars that are restricted. So like Lindsay said, you can't transfer them to the general fund. You can't use them for community service. It really has to be spent on that food service function.
Can the state reclaim those?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Lindsay, shake your head no.
I suppose if you don't comply and you
I guess.
continue to not meet the federal guidelines, I suppose eventually I've never seen it.
I haven't either.
But I suppose in the end they probably could.
I guess in theory, yes, you probably could, but I have not seen it in practice.
Could we use those funds for the family engagement kinds of activities that Mr. Walker was talking about earlier?
Oh, for taco night?
Yeah, or something like that. Well, she's shaking.
I'm
her
guessing no.
head.
A lot of times if you
You're there. Is it-
no, a lot of times if you do have federal dollars, they're outside of some of the CARES and the Gear and Nester, they're really specific on what you can and cannot spend it on. So my general rule of thumb is unless they say you specifically can spend it on that, you probably can't.
Yeah.
It's kind of my
We'll just hang loose.
Yeah, we tried.
I'm sure there's appliances and stuff that can be looked at once we get notification. MDU will send out notification, and then that's when you'll put your plan together.
Mhm.
Thank you.
yeah. Any other questions on that? Slide 6, just relevant to future accounting standards. Lease accounting will go into place in fiscal year 2022. That will affect the financial statements and how those are accounted for. Then there's also some financial reporting around 457 deferred compensation plans. That also got pushed back 1 year with COVID. It does not need to be implemented for fiscal year 2021, but it'll be put in place in fiscal year 2022. So I know both Lindsay and we as well go through various trainings on how to account for those, but there'll just be some changes that are coming up in your next financial statement audit. All right. We'll keep going. Page 7 is going to look at the general fund and compare your unassigned fund balance to your expenditures or your budget expenditures in the general fund, and then also compare where you're at on a policy standpoint. So again, here we're going to look at these unassigned fund balances. So we're not going to look at what's actually encompassed in those restricted dollars that can only be spent for specific purposes. We're going to look at the dollars that can be spent at the discretion of the school. So a good measure of liquidity is to look at that bar at the bottom. So you can see between your fund balance policy and your unassigned fund balance, you've basically been right in line. Your fund balance policy calls for 2 months of expenditures in your fund balance. You've been basically right in line with that in fiscal years, the last 2 fiscal years prior to this one. That did jump up in the current fiscal year due to a variety of reasons, which we'll actually look at in the next couple slides. But that is good to see with those fund balance trending upward and building those reserves that you are above where your policy calls for. You're right about at the 2.5 months where your policy calls for 2 months. And as you looked at earlier, just looking at your ADM compared to your general fund expenditures. So really what you want to see is that line fluctuate similarly with where the bar graph is. And as you can see is your enrollment has climbed over the past 5 fiscal years and is continuing to climb in fiscal year 2022. So your actual cost to operate, as Mr. Thomas mentioned earlier, you are smaller districts, so you're going to have some of those overhead items that are going to be not spread out over as many students, but you have that capacity to grow that. As that would happen, you'd see your costs on an ADM basis go down. But in 2020 or 2021, your cost to operate on a per ADM basis was $14,800. Okay. We can go to slide 9, which is going to look at the general fund a little bit more detail for fiscal year 2021. So after the amendments, after ADM changes and figuring out where some of the federal funding was going to be, we anticipated about 3.37 million in revenues compared to 3.24 million in expenditures. And then we also have some transfers out that subsidize some other functions of the school. So at the beginning of the year, when the budget was amended, I guess we anticipated about a $120,000 increase in fund balance. Actual amounts actually about doubled that for a few different reasons. So we did have a positive budget variance in revenues of about $70,000. ADM was a little bit higher than anticipated. So as mentioned, that is going to be tied directly to a lot of your gen ed aid. And that ended up being about $55,000 of that $70,000 that was over budget. You also had a little bit less in SPED funding due to a decrease in costs from fiscal year 2020 to 2021. So SPED dollars did decrease, or Fed expenditures were down about $42,000 from the prior fiscal year, which is directly reimbursed, so it caused a little decrease in revenue. And then you also had some federal dollars that ended up being about $165,000 for various programs. So you had your CARES dollars, you had your GEARS, your ESSER dollars. There's also some summer programming dollars that weren't anticipated. I think that ended up being about $13,000. That sound right, Lindsay? That was collected as far as revenue. So there was a lot of federal dollars that were used to help the general fund for fiscal year 2021 that could be applied to various expenditures. So again, at the end of the year, you did have about $70,000 more in revenues than expected. Expenditures at the same time were under budget by about $42,000, so another positive variance there. And for a variety of reasons, obviously COVID had a significant impact on operating the school, whether it be utilities with remote learning, dedicating supplies towards putting it towards some of those remote learning programs. Again, we mentioned SPED costs were down. So again, a wide variety of reasons, but overall expenditures did come in favorably by $42,000. So if we combine all that, we anticipated fund balances growing about $123,000. They actually went up $235,000. So you had ending fund balance in the general fund a little over $1 million at the end of the year, compared to $775,000 to start the year. Again, some of that is going to be restricted for various purposes, but the majority of that is going to be unassigned for spending at the district's discretion. Mr. Thomas, Lindsay, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I appreciate your comments.
Okay. We'll keep going. Next slide, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but I do just want to point out, if you look at the significant resources of the general fund, for every dollar that the general fund does collect, about 81% does come from state aid through the various functions, gen ed and SPED. And then you did have a little bit of an uptick in the federal sources this year, which accounted for about 7%. So as you mentioned earlier, looking at the levy, your levy does only account for about 10% of the collections in the general fund from an operating standpoint or from operating the general fund. Okay. Next slide is slide 11. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Just note that as your ADM continues to go up, you're going to collect additional revenue again from those statewide sources of the gen ed function. Okay. Next slide, we're going to change gears a little bit and look at general fund expenditures by program. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this other than, and it was noted earlier, Mr. Thomas brought it up. But one thing I do like to point out is what is dedicated to instruction versus what is dedicated to support. And about 55% of your costs are being dedicated to that instruction side versus the support. That was up a little bit from the prior fiscal year, which was 53%. Again, a lot of it is going to be related to that COVID response and dedicating additional resources to providing those to students. Questions on that? Okay. Next slide, slide 13. Really what we're going to do here is what this graph does is compare your school district, which is going to be that top line, and compare it on a quartile basis or a box plot on how you compare with other districts throughout the state of Minnesota. So again, you're on a little bit of the higher end from an ADM standpoint. That has been trending down a little bit, as you can see over the past couple of years with that increasing enrollment. And you would continue to see that move towards kind of that statewide average as you do grow enrollment. So if that enrollment is steady throughout the year, I would anticipate that top graph to continue to kind of merge back to that statewide average, just basically meaning that you have that capacity to grow and to have additional students in the classrooms without affecting expenditures. Okay. Questions on the general fund? The next operating fund we're going to look at is the food service fund. So it's the same thing. We anticipated about 171,000 in revenues compared to 170 in expenditures. So that net change in fund balance, if that was zero, that basically mean that we'd anticipate a balanced budget for the food service funds. We thought there'd be a little bit of an increase. That ended up increasing about $7,600. Like Lindsay mentioned, she does budget the food service fund on a conservative basis with the additional collection of the revenue through the food or the free lunch program. Meals served were up, so you did collect additional revenue. There's obviously going to be additional cost to provide those meals as well. So that's why you see that the expenditures are over budget as well. There were some of those capital purchases, about $17,000. That sound right, Lindsay, give or take, for the food service, which were offset with some of those grant dollars that you received as well. So at the end of the year, the food service fund had about $84,000 in fund balance compared to $76,000 at the beginning of the year. Okay. And if you go to the next slide, slide 15, you can see again kind of the trend in the food service, and that did jump up in 2021. Again, that's going to be directly tied to the meals that were provided and there's just additional costs that were incurred to provide those meals. Okay. The community service fund, same thing. We anticipated about a $28,000 increase in fund balance during the year. And so the community service does get some levy dollars, as we mentioned. There's a $10,000 transfer into the fund from the general fund as well. So there was a deficit at the beginning of the year, about $107,000. That did decrease to a $97,000 deficit at the end of the year. A few different reasons for that. There was some additional revenue again related to that summer food programming function. And then there was also some additional expenditures incurred due to ECFE that weren't in place when the final budget was put in place. So variety of factors on that, with the expenditures being over budget, and did not increase fund balance as much as anticipated. So there is still that deficit on that. A lot of times schools will budget either annually to get rid of that deficit. As you can see here, that the general fund did subsidize it by $10,000 to decrease that deficit. But again, being a kind of one of those separate funds, it really should be self-sustaining. But depending on what services you want to provide, it will be paid for by a variety of other services as well, or other resources as well. Okay. Slide 17, as you can see, this district is basically right in line with the statewide average as far as an expenditures on a per ADM basis. And it's been pretty consistent year over year. There hasn't been a whole lot of change over the past 4 years. Okay. And the next slide is going to be the debt service fund, which is going to be your last fund that you're going to have in place here. Which is going to basically just be dedicated to make the bond payments on those various bonds. So you do have your capital lease that is maturing. I believe that is the one that you maybe brought up earlier. Maybe it's something different. Either way, you do have a lease that's maturing in 2023, and as you can see,
That's the general fund, those are the bonds.
Gotcha. Sure. So those are dropping off in 2023, and you can see the impact on your cash flow. Right now, you're right at about $65,000 a year that are being paid, and then that is dropping down to a little bit under 30,000 in 2024.
So in 2023, the kitchen will be all paid for. And the other one would be the what?
Those are the bonds that we took out to do the boiler
The
project.
boiler. So
Correct.
kitchen and boiler.
Well, that is not maturing for quite a while.
2035.
It's the kitchen.
Yep.
It's the kitchens.
Just the kitchen,
Correct. Yes, because we've had those for
2023.
Yep.
Yeah.
That'll be dropping off in 2023. So basically, it just means that there's about
And they were
$40,000.
low interest loans.
yes.
3.5%.
Yep.
No, it's right here.
Never mind.
Any other questions on that? But if we go to slide 19, kind of bringing everything together, you can see what the impact is on everything overall. Overall, your cash balances from fiscal year 19 to 2021 has basically gone up about a little over $300,000. A majority of that is going to be in the general fund. Again, not all of that's going to be available for spending just on anything. A lot of that's going to be restricted. Some of that will be restricted for a specific purpose. But at the end of 2021, you did have about $750,000 in cash and investment balances on hand between your various functions. Okay. So the last couple slides here are going to be just some key performance indicators on how you're going to be comparing to your peers throughout the state of Minnesota and throughout your region. And one thing I'll point out on the property taxes, always a hot topic is where the property taxes are at. But you're a little bit under on a per ADM basis. And you can actually see that your average school district property tax per home, which in the middle, is about half of where your peers are at. A lot of that is likely due to just have a big agricultural footprint with your district. Okay.
Is that just? Okay, I have to think about this.
Mhm.
Like our neighboring districts have bond referendums.
Yes,
We do not have that.
correct.
So is that indicated on here?
It would be. So I think that would be reflected in that very far left graph on your taxes per ADM. So basically, what that's saying is that from a per student basis, if you were to look at what you collect in taxes, it's about $1,500. And looking at your peers throughout the region, which is kind of the greater Mankato area, more or less, it's about $1,800. So you're about $275 less on a per ADM basis from collecting on the taxes. And also on the statewide average, the same thing. So the statewide average and the region are more or less right in line. And you're at about $275 less than, or $250 less than that that peer group from that aspect. As Mr. Thomas mentioned earlier, there's a lot that goes into the property tax calculation, and that's where those next two graphs kind of reflect that. It could be the assessed market value. It could be, what percentages broken down between residential and business, agricultural. So that is, again, kind of reflected in those next two graphs on how that is actually kind of allocated on a per home basis. Because there can be a lot of different factors that do go into that from where the market values are. Does that answer your question?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Any other questions?
So our levy sunsets in 2023, the existing levy that we have.
Correct.
What happens? I'm gonna be worst case scenario here. If the voters do not renew a levy referendum, what happens then?
Well, let's say worst case scenario, and they don't. They just say, you're not doing it now, we're not gonna do it ever, we're just not gonna increase our,
Does the state come in and say, okay,
no. no one saves us.
So then we're not gonna have taxes on anything for the school. We're
Well,
only gonna rely on
The
what,
levy brings in
Just the
about,
operating referendum,
Yeah.
the excess. So there's many calculations. We'll still have property tax dollars coming in. It'll just be much less because we're gonna lose our excess levy piece.
Do you know what that operating referendum, how much that is, Lindsay, on an annual basis? I don't off the top of my head.
is it in the area of like 200,000? This is my,
I'd have to look.
I
don't
would too.
remember off the
I don't
top of
know
my head.
either.
so essentially, let's just say that it's in that area, just for purposes of conversation. So then what that would mean then, Christie, is that we would have to figure out a way to have the school move ahead without that $200,000. And that's essentially it. That would, we could, you saw we have a fund reserve now, and we probably will for another year or so. But after that, we would have to be digging into that fund reserve, which we would, at some point, we would have to make, cuts. We have, for example, we have, class sizes of 15, 16. What we might have to do is, I'm just suggesting that we would maybe have to combine, say, grades 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 or something like that, and reduce a teacher, eliminate one of our teachers.
and then have
our teachers.
larger class
And
size.
you'd have larger class sizes, and then you'd be teaching, the teacher would be responsible for teaching 2 levels of kids, which would not be ideal by any means at all, of course. So there's no good result of that.
From that happening.
No,
Correct.
there's no good result. And so I would, on the other side of the coin, the more positive side is that I would be quite, I'll just say, surprised if the public here did not support continuing what they've been supporting over the years. In other words, if we didn't,
I don't
we didn't even increase it more, if they just said that it's gonna be the same that you've always had, this, whatever amount of money, the same levy will be asked of you for the next 10 years. I would be surprised if they would say, well, yeah, we could, it's nothing higher, so I guess we can handle that. That's the positive side. So, and obviously the truth is gonna be somewhere between the positive and the negative. So,
Any other questions? Page 21, again, looking at your general fund balances as a percentage of expenditures, we already looked at kind of where the district has been at, and we'll also compare that again to other schools in your region and the statewide average. So as you can see over the past 3 years, you were a little bit below that statewide average, but with the variety of additional federal dollars that have come in, you're increasing enrollment. You can see that has jumped up from 23% to 32%. Again, this is going to be your overall fund balance. This is going to include your restrictions, not just your unassigned. But you're basically right in line now where the statewide average is at. Now, once we actually get all the data for 2021, I would expect that that would probably jump up as well with all the schools. There was a large influx of federal dollars that came in. So that has been pretty constant where general or districts have been building their reserves in fiscal year 2021. You're also going to have additional dollars available in 2022 through the GEARS and the ESSER program to spend as well. So we don't really know what legislation holds and how long that's going to be going for, but you do have another year of that at least for those different programs.
For sure, the federal dollars is various ESSER grants and other grants that we're getting from the federal government have helped us immeasurably.
Yep.
We, I won't say we would have been in dire shape, but I would just say that we would have been in a much worse shape. We probably would be at maybe 200,000 or more under where we are for the last 2 years, and that's the same for this year, next year, because they still go until fiscal year 23, and we're in fiscal year 22 right now. So we'll be okay for the next 2 years. I think it's fair to say, and again, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, if we can continue to increase our enrollment by a little bit every year, all that together, then I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, and to go off that point, we talked about earlier where your general fund fund balance did increase about that 250,000. That's more or less right in line with kind of what you received in those federal dollars throughout the year. So again, you're going to have that available over the next couple of years as well, but it definitely does help from a cash flow standpoint. Okay. The next couple slides, again, kind of going back to these box and whisker plots. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. We did talk about, you're a little bit on that higher end, above that statewide average on that per ADM basis. But if you look at drill down a little bit more on the elementary and secondary regular instruction, again, it basically mirrors what the general fund has been at overall. One thing I do like to preface, it doesn't necessarily mean that's a good or a bad thing. It really just means on a per ADM basis, you are putting additional dollars kind of towards that function than where some of your peers are at through the state. And so interestingly enough, if you go to the next slide, slide 23, as you mentioned, your sped expenditures have been decreasing over the past couple of years, which has been shown in some of that decrease in the revenue as well. But that is kind of on an inverse basis of where the statewide average has been at. So statewide average has been trending upwards, where you've just been trending downward over the past couple of years. And with that, that is all I have.
I don't see your picture on the team.
I don't know. They didn't give me one.
Oh, let's fix that next time.
I guess it's not important enough. Well, I guess if you want to talk to Sheila or Abby, you can
I would
contact
do
them.
that, yeah.
You're gonna have to.
Only fair.
It is.
You
They'll-
did the work, you came here. and
I know.
Wait for 45 minutes before we even had you up.
They'll direct questions to me if they have them. But if you do have anything that comes up, feel free to reach out to anybody that's on that last slide. Somebody will be able to get you an answer. Lindsay, Mr. Thomas, do you have anything else to add that you want to point out for fiscal year 2021?
No, I think I've covered it all. I would just want to add what you just said, that if anyone has any questions, you go home tonight or tomorrow and you think of something, run it by me and I can make sure that we get an answer to that question. The guys are very helpful.
Lindsay?
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate the time. And yeah,
Thank you, Lynn.
yes, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, the first item on the agenda is to actually vote on the acceptance of the audit report.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the audit report for 2020, 2021?
Susan?
Susan? Do I have a second?
A second.
So I got, is there any other discussion? Any questions? All right. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. We'll move on to 2021 payable 2022 levy limitation and certification. It was provided in our truth in taxation resolution that Mr. Thomas had read for us.
Right.
You
Well,
want to
also-
read it again?
Yeah, I could read this for you and then we'll have a person make that motion.
Make a motion, yeah.
Mhm. Whereas pursuant to Minnesota statutes, the school board of Butterfield-Odin Public School District, Butterfield, Minnesota, is authorized to make the following proposed tax levies for general purposes. For the general fund, $366,620.63. And for community service, $22,478.97. For general debt service, $17,399.05. For the total proposed school tax levy of $406,498.65. So it'd be, the resolution would be now therefore be it resolved by the school board of Butterfield-Odin Public School District, Butterfield, Minnesota, that the levy to be levied in 2021 to be collected in 2022 is set at $406,498.65. The clerk of the Butterfield-Odin Public School is authorized to certify the proposed levy to the county auditor of Watonwan County, Minnesota.
You,
I move to approve the 2021 payable 2022 levy limitation and certification in the amount of $406,498.
And 65 cents.
Okay, that little zero in front of that.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
yeah,
65 cents.
yeah, kind of was an odd thing in there.
Okay, so we read that resolution.
All right, do I have a second to approve the resolution?
One second.
And I believe we have to do a roll call vote on resolution.
Mm, let's do that for this, for levy, yes.
All
You
right,
wanna,
we'll do a roll vote. We'll start with Caitlin Keeker,
Yes.
Susan Fast,
Yes.
Christy Hazeman, yes. Shannon Sykes.
yes,
All right, the resolution passes 4-0.
all right, we'll move on to presentation, discussion, and approval to accept an Excel Energy rebate and retrofit lighting and design lighting contractor to replace school lights.
Mr. Chairman, let me pass out a piece that we had last time. What we decided at our last board meeting was that we wanted to get a bit more information, so I asked Jake, who was on the phone with us, to do that, and he did send some information. I sent that to you Friday or Saturday, I think it was. And then these are the three proposals that they suggested from us for us to consider. And what they essentially amount to is how much we're willing to pay for, how much we're willing to, we would be getting in return for our, um, for the energy savings. Now, let me just go over those, if I might, and I also have Jake, who's ready to speak to us on the phone if there's any reason that we might want to ask him any questions. So I'm quite willing to do that whenever there might be a question. Just looking at the first page, that is the most important. The option number one is the least expensive. And as you can see, the total investment, it's to replace all the fluorescent lighting with new LED bulbs. The total investment is just under $60,000. We get a fairly sizable rebate of 17,000. So the estimated annual savings would be 13,000. So the final cost, just trying to see where that would be here. I just have to do the math, I guess. I thought the math was on here, but essentially, if you say $60,000 and the rebate is 17, we're looking at a $43,000 investment. Now, and the next step up is substantially more, of course. $192,000 would be the investment. Now you get a bigger rebate on that 25,000, but obviously it doesn't compare to jumping up by 3 times as much money. But then you have certain advantages. For one thing, you get, and he doesn't have, I asked him, Jake, the energy savings, I don't see, they're even better for option 2. And he said, well, they hesitate to put in, which is good in a way, they hesitate to suggest that they're going to be a lot greater because it depends on all sorts of factors, and he doesn't feel comfortable saying that on paper showing that amount of the savings. And then so the bottom line cost for us with the savings of the rebate of 25,000 would be about 170,000, about $168,000 in total cost. The next is to replace all the fluorescent lighting with new LED fixtures, and with the dimming and the sensors that we've talked about. Putting those in addition to what's in option 2 is what you're talking about, and that cost would be 220,000. So it's not quite $30,000 more to do that. The rebate again is in that $25,000 range. So you're talking about 195,000 is your total cost for that project. The difference between some of these is really in the length of time that they're gonna stay there, how they're gonna still be producing that energy savings. You can see that where it shows estimated solution life. The first option is just 10 to 15 years. The second option is 25 to 30, and the third option is 30 plus. So you get, I think we should just kind of have a conversation about it. What you're gonna get are more features that are nice to have for spending a whole lot more money. I was in the classroom for 25 years, and as a teacher, I know that some of those features would be really nice. So I use this as an example. You can't see, well, when it was up there, you couldn't see the screen very well because we can't easily dim part of the room the way the room's set up. But if you had the dimming and the censoring and so forth, you could just kind of flip a switch, and or the teacher could just kind of dim it and have certain rooms and certain parts of the room dimmer and certain parts lighter. Those are really nice to have. They're really nice to have. Are they worth $200,000 compared to $50,000? That's essentially what I think that the question is. And then the suggestion is, I find it hard to believe, but the suggestion, I'll be honest, the suggestion is that that's going to be a solution for 30 plus years at that $200,000 cost, as opposed to 10 or 15 years. I don't know that. I could say a lot more, but what I'm getting to is that I really think that we ought to, and this is the frugal guy in me, and I usually in that direction. My suggestion is that we go with the less expensive with the three options. And that if we have to worry about it in 10 or 15 years, who knows if there isn't something that comes along in 10 or 15 years that's even better than LED lighting. I have no idea. But for me to commit for the school to essentially we'd have to borrow money to do this. We wouldn't want to just take it. We could pay cash, but it's not what we would normally do with something like this. And for us to commit to do that at that cost, I just don't think it's worth the extra money. Now, totally, if we can definitely, I'm not going to disagree with anyone about the benefits of the other I just mentioned. For me in the classroom, I know it would have been great. I didn't have it years ago, but that we could provide that. Is it worth another $150,000? So, in my mind, I may say so. I don't think so. So if we can, Mr. Grimmon, open it up for conversation.
Sorry to interrupt you, so I agree with you on the lesser of value. I mean, because, you know, like you said, you can come back in 10 or 15 years, and if you have that money, go for a better option. Because you never know what's gonna happen. You know, because we could end up using the money for an emergency fix or something. So that would probably be a better option.
I took the liberty of sharing this information with my husband, who is a journeyman licensed electrician, retired. But I showed this to him, and he said, I definitely think you should go with, for sure with option one.
Okay.
He thought this looked like a viable plan.
Yeah.
So he said, it's not gonna get any cheaper, Christie. He said, I know that. So
My husband will agree with yours. He said it seemed to be easier just to change out the bulbs, save yourself some more money.
yeah,
And then, like I said, go years later, go down the road, you really insist on changing lights, then you can, that would be an option to pursue.
yeah. And I keep thinking about, in 2023, we will have the kitchen paid for. So, if we end up borrowing money to do this project,
Mhm.
And I think I'm very proud that Butterfield-Odin has done all the improvements that we have done without going out for a bond referendum. So, I mean, I think that is something to be proud of.
And Mr. Chairman, if you're looking again at the annual energy savings, if they're anywhere close to $13,000, and let's just say they're not, maybe it's 10,000, I have no idea. I mean, that's what he says. I mean, that's not based on some fellow who's trying to sell us something coming up with these figures. They actually have to run these by the state. I mean, but there's certain entities that check all this and produce these numbers for them. But I'm just saying, if we could come up with anything like $8,000 or $10,000 every year because of this, it would pay this off in 4 or 5 years.
Instead of
Mhm,
waiting.
mhm, mhm. Otherwise, it would take 3 or 4 times as long to pay it off. And so, again, I would love to have, if it was $40,000 more to have all the other, I'd say, yeah, let's do that. It's not. It's $150,000.
I think Christie's ready to make a motion. So.
Sounds like it.
All right. I move to select retro lighting and design to replace most school lighting with more efficient and long-lasting LED lighting and related improvements with plan number 1 or option 1.
I'll second.
Was that Katie?
All right, we have a motion by Christie, a second by Katie. To select retro lighting and design to replace school lighting with option number 1, which is $59,900, and the estimated rebate from Excel is gonna be $17,116.82. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
You are? You opposed? Right. I gotta change my notes here.
All right,
You would have gone with option 3, right?
no, all right. Motion carries 3-1. I've always been against this.
Go
Well,
with what?
you-
I've always just been against. I mean, I don't see the benefits. I've been in places where we've done the retrofitting or retro lighting, and I don't see the benefits from it. So, I'm not a believer.
You're a computer man.
Well,
convinced.
that's why we would go with a less expensive approach. If, as I said, if the savings are anything close to what they're talking about, well, we'd be paying off our
Right.
purchase pretty quickly.
It would have been better.
No.
if Everybody was here.
Yeah,
So we don't have to do a roll call then.
no, not on that.
Okay,
That's fine.
and I don't have to document that Shannon said no.
Go ahead. Throw me under the bus.
Yes, you should, I think.
Yeah.
It's just a little buzz.
Yeah. Come back and I hope you come back in 2 years, 3 years and say, oh, look, we've saved $30,000 and
That'd be great.
then you can really throw me under the bus. All right, seniority list. We need a motion for 2021-2022 teaching staff seniority list as presented. We have that, Steve? Is that what you just said?
That's what I just passed out to you, yeah. Essentially, that's a document that we go by, if we were going to be reducing staff. Obviously, like any union organization, the last in, so to speak, is the first out. And so those who have been here longer, have seniority, and they would have those seniority rights, which means they would not be bumped if there was a situation that I don't foresee anyway. But so every year at this time, we put together the seniority list, and everyone knows where they are and all of that. And so there aren't any questions about it.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the 2021-2022 teaching staff seniority list as presented.
All right, I have a motion by Christie. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
second by Susan.
By
Susan. All right, I have a motion by Chrissy, second by Susan. Any discussion, questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Resolution, combined polling places.
Mr. Chairman, we have to do this every year just for legal purposes to make sure that everyone knows that we have certain we have 2 polling places and each of them combines a number of different areas. For example, the polling place that we have here in the school combines the not only the city, but the township and a couple of other areas around us. And the same thing with Odin. That particular location includes not only Odin, but a few townships around it as well. And we just have to make sure that that everyone knows that for legal purposes every year at this time.
Are we required to read this resolution?
Are you looking at the same? You're looking at the number 5, or are you looking?
Yeah,
at
but
the-
we actually have a
Yeah,
true
that's,
resolution, so we
yeah,
need to
yeah.
actually read this, correct?
no, that's the resolution that we're passing. We don't have to read the entire thing
Okay.
though. If we just read what's number 5 here.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah.
All right, somebody want to make a motion
I'll motion.
and then we actually have to read the motion there as presented correctly.
Yeah, I can read
Do
that
you wanna
part.
read that?
She's making a motion to approve the resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Do I have a second? I'll second that. All right, I have a motion by Susan and a second by Shannon, myself. Any other discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries 4-0. Public comments, anybody got any wisdom, words of wisdom? Words of wisdom?
Thank you all for coming.
All right. We do not have any public comments, then we'll move into other, and under other, we actually have need a motion to
Yes,
move into a.
Mr. Chairman, if I might mention what specifically and legally what we have to say is pursuant to Minnesota statute 121A dot 47 subdivision 5, we would move into a closed session to discuss a private student matter.
We do have a motion to move into closed session.
I so move.
Christie, do I have a second? All right, I have a motion by Christie and a second by Katie to move into closed session. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just mention to those who are here, we will come out of closed session in a little bit, but we have no plan to make any other motions for anything else. There'll be no more official business is my expectation for the rest of the evening. So it's not like you're gonna be missing anything that you should stick around for. So, you can make your decision as to what you want to do. That's my suggestion is you want to go home.
We will motion.
Can't hang out in the hallway or the cafeteria and then we will open up. And then they'll say nothing. They'll say that.
I just have to stand up for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna end this.
Aaron, yeah, you're shutting
Am
it.
I allowed to stay in here and tear down? I don't know if there's anything we've done already.
No,
I can't take.
no. But you know what?
It
By
won't
the time, no, it won't be short.
be short.
No.
Okay.
So, why don't you go ahead and do what you can do there and we'll take